We're glad you're here. I think Shona's going to go, Dr. Voss is going to go over the suggestions and rules and what the topic is for today. And we're certainly happy that you're here. My name is Jeff Baker. I'm Executive Director for APPIC. And we're here to talk about improving morale and managing burnout.
Thank you, Jeff, for introducing us. So I know we're all old hat at these items by now, but we're on a call rather than a webinar, so everyone can participate. Please mute yourself unless you are speaking. If you use speaker view instead of gallery view, you can focus on just the person who is speaking. We use the chat box a lot for these community calls, so please feel free to put questions, comments, and suggestions in the chat. At the end of the meeting, we send out a transcript of the chat, so you will have all of those for review later. There's also a raise your hand feature if you have something to say, but chat we find is a little bit more effective because we can't always see everyone on the screen, depending on how many attendees we have. These calls is really to facilitate dialogue among our members and to cultivate our sense of community. So please, please, please participate. In the interest of being inclusive and giving everyone space to talk, we ask that you limit your comments to no more than 1 minute at a time. And the call will be recorded and posted with the slides and the chat on the APPIC website. I'm going to introduce our panelists for today. I will go first. My name is last, but my name is Shona Vaz, and I serve as the secretary on the APPIC board. In my day job, I am the training director at the University of Chicago Medical Center, where we have an internship program and a fellowship program, and also a very large externship program. And right now, a lot of very tired, burned out, discouraged people. So I have lots to say today, but I'll stop talking now and pass it to Dr. Hill.
I'm Kimberly Hill, and you may know me best as APPIC coordinator. So you're either hating me or loving me right now, depending on which side of it you are in with all of our new rollouts. In my day job, I'm at the Stanford University School of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry, where I supervise postdoctoral fellows, and I'm the DCT of the PGSP Stanford PsyD Consortium. And Yaida?
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here on these community calls. My name is Yaida Kendo Figueroa. I'm the Director of Training at Salud Family Health Centers and, of course, a board member. And happy to be here talking about stress management and burnout and all of those things.
Thank you. Jeff, was there anything you wanted to add about your role as APPIC ED?
Oh, just go over a slight history. Training director for an internship and an APA accredited postdoc at the University of Texas Medical Branch. And I certainly fully understand burnout. I'm not always sure I recognize those signs. I just keep pushing. So I am interested in this call today myself.
All right, thank you. So as usual, we have organized the call into a series of questions, and we will facilitate discussion about each of those categories. These are by no means exhaustive, so if you have a question that you'd like us to address, please feel free to put it in the chat, and we will come back to it. We might adjust our schedule. Our question number 1 is kind of a biggie, so we'll spend a little more time on that one, and anticipate about 20 minutes and then 10 minutes for each of the others. Again, we want to hear from you, so please speak up. If it is time, we might need to move on to the next one, but we want you to feel free to share your perspective. Thank you so much.
So I'm going to open it up here. What specific problems, concerns have you been managing that feel a little different than usual? And of course, we threw up a few things here that I'm sure most of you are struggling or dealing with. And as Shona mentioned earlier, we really want to facilitate discussion. Psychologists sometimes fill the void and sometimes wait for responses. So I'm going to wait a second or two or 3 or 10 and see if we can get some discussion going from the audience.
We have about 50 people on our call today, which is smaller than usual, believe it or not. And so I hope that we have lots of perspectives and maybe people will feel more comfortable speaking up in a smaller group, even though 50 is a little daunting.
Hello, this is Dr. Ezel over at Lincoln Hill School in northern Wisconsin, and I would just say yes to all of those. Yes, 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 all of those. And we are in the midst of a huge transition up here. We are down clinicians. We've got clinicians still working off-site. We've got interns we're training with limited on-site clinicians. Yeah, and just in transition as a correctional facility with talk about politics, like, yeah, all the way up to the governor, very interested in what we're doing. So, so yeah, pressure and uncertainty and stress. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
Good. So we'll get to the treatment shortly here. But those certainly fit for a number of people, and I appreciate you recognizing those. Wisconsin certainly gets in the highlight news here in Texas, so appreciate you contributing to taking some of the heat off of Texas, but we have our own here. I'm not sure how people are managing this, because you also have your trainees to take care of and nurture and make sure that they are being protected. So at some point, where do you say, how do you say, or would you say enough is enough?
I definitely think humor is helping me quite a bit. And I do want to say to people who say, yes, I heard about you in the news, I do want to say, don't believe everything you read in the news, you know, contact the direct source. And we are doing a lot of really amazing things here. So hopefully we're hearing more and more of that, and we'll continue to hear even more. We have a goal of being on the cutting edge and, you know, a kind of site that is superior and that will be doing training across the nation, since we seem to be leading the way in corrections for juveniles. So.
Well, that's a nice reframe there on taking all those overwhelming feelings and feeling like that you're going to benefit others from that. Anyone else on here?
I was struck by that reframe, and what I got from it was that you are reminding yourself why you do what you do. And it seems like that is really important for all of these pieces when everything just seems so hard.
Yes, I'm definitely energized by inspiration of those that go before me and those with whom I work, including the youth, who very much inspire me on a day-to-day basis.
I have a comment in the chat about things seeming more disorganized and disorderly with people working remotely, and that has somewhat slowed the start for many of your trainees. Is that something that people have struggled with as they've tried to get going in this new year?
There certainly seems to be a lot of chaos in communication and left hand, right hand kind of issues. I find it very frustrating at my hospital to figure out who's in charge of what, and sometimes I learn that those folks are no longer there, and so it's very overwhelming. And just like that person just said, policies and procedures seem to change daily, and including information from the CDC, so it can be overwhelming.
Our head administrator recently quit, and today was supposed to be her last day, and I think that she agreed to stay on after we redefined her role and clarified the issues that she would have to deal with. So it seems like sometimes support from management and asking for help is a strategy that might be useful in certain situations. I wonder if people have had any experiences where there have been institutional resources that you didn't previously access that were options for you.
I think IT has been something that we have to access way more than usual. And the very interesting thing is how we are working with them more. And maybe before we did not have that need, and we were able to get away without contacting them as much. But now it seems that it's more interaction, and I think it's a possibility, or it has opened the door of knowing other team members. And yes, I have been stressed at some time, but oh, let me tell you, IT has been very stressed as well.
Well,
and I think that, you know, recognizing that
a couple more good comments in here about feeling overloaded and being torn between providing these clinical services from patients and clients that are in high need for this, and feeling like that there's just not enough time to do all of this, everything, as well as take care of yourself, as well as the concerns about your trainees. And those folks are definitely vulnerable, as we learned during this last March and April, when trainees were sometimes put into difficult situations of choosing to be at work or put a hold on their training. So we worked through most of those issues, but that can be stressful to training directors too. I don't know any training director out there that wanted their interns to stop. They were worried about them and wanted to keep them safe. And then HR and home university policies came into effect, and that created some additional stress for training directors out there. So we definitely have a home here for us to talk about this. And I appreciate the comments in the chat, because those are very accurate.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I'm the internship coordinator for UW-Madison Psychiatry, psychology internship. And when we couldn't find the resources that we needed, we actually just went out and created them. We set up all sorts of virtual get-togethers with our interns, and we've just recently started paring those back based on intern feedback, while making sure that they're setting time together outside of us, because we're not seeing anybody in person still, so that they have the opportunity to have a group text or a WebEx that's set up for them once a month, that they can just do whatever they want, nobody interferes. And we've gotten some pretty positive feedback from that. So I think we're coping fairly well over here.
Great. Thanks for that information. A new chat just came in, and I think most of the country is abuzz with the directive, executive order that went out to the VA, which is not helping with people's stress or stress management, and cutting back on services, as well as being able to provide trainees with opportunities to provide service. The VA and some other states don't allow across state lines jurisdictions to provide those services. So people are struggling to provide their trainees with enough frontline or direct service opportunities there. APPIC has been pretty forgiving and supportive of programs coming up with diverse ways. If your trainee can't provide it across state line, but I think with the VA that the licensed provider can provide it across state line. And if the trainee can sit in on that, they can get credit for some direct service, or at least that's my understanding, both with APPIC and with APA, that would count if the trainee is running short or not getting enough opportunities. So maybe that's something that you could consider.
We're also aware of the recent directive that has come from the president about diversity training and the implications for some of the VA sites and your diversity programming in your programs, especially if they're accredited programs. And we are really glad for you to be able to provide you with a space that is sort of offline or in your private citizen role, and know that APPIC and the board is here for you should you need to reach out to us.
And the board is discussing this, and we've seen a couple of other responses from other organizations that we found helpful. Specifically, the New England Journal of Medicine had an interesting editorial recently that some people are looking at. And there are some workarounds that some folks are looking at even within the VA or federal systems there, not going against any executive order, but complying with it and still being able to provide the support for diverse trainees as well as diverse experiences within the training program.
Jada, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about sort of the issue with the upcoming election and some of the things that you've noticed, especially among your trainees of color.
I think that many of my trainees have been bringing this topic more to supervision and didactics and all of the trainings. I think that there are many concerns. One of those concerns is related to how patients will be affected, considering that we are AFQHC and a lot of talk related to the ACA and patients on Medicaid, and what is going to happen with all of those things. That's one of the concerns. The other concerns is about safety in general, and feeling that they can be a target, especially the trainees who are living in Denver area. The way that they look, the experiences of racism and discrimination that they have had already living here, and I think it's extremely important for them to have a space to talk about it and to create a sense of safety within the training program to manage those very real stressors that are affecting their job. The other topic has been patients bringing their political views and what they think about the situation when it does not match the trainees' values. So very interesting conversations around that. And that takes us to the other question that we have here. What practices have you put in place to improve staff and trainees' morale? What can we do when we hear our trainees and our staff worried about all of these things?
A couple of weeks ago, it's still nice enough in Chicago to have an outdoor gathering, and we originally conceptualized this event to facilitate connection with our interns among each other, but we had a socially distanced potluck picnic outside, and it was the first time that many of us as staff had seen each other in 6 months. We see each other on meetings on Zoom a couple times a week, but we were all so uplifted in a way that felt really wonderful and highlighted the importance of doing it more often. So since then, we do a once a week happy hour at 5:30, and maybe 4 or 5 people show up. But I really appreciated being able to see my colleagues again. I believe we got that idea from someone on this call who said they did an outdoor gathering. Our happy hour is in person. It's the day when all of our trainees are on site, so we invite them as well. And it's at the end of the workday. So we sort of show up at 5:30 and hang out until it gets dark, which is 7:15, and people come if they can. And we have had a few people come. It's in a space that's wide enough for us to stand far apart and sit far apart with masks and social distancing. One of the other pieces that we've done more recently is our institution has a voluntary COVID testing program with once a week testing for anyone who would like to be tested. And so all of our trainees who are coming to site have signed up for this. And so I think that it provides them with peace of mind. If nothing else. Ooh, socially distanced hiking. Wow.
That's when we have the okay with the air quality being out here in the Bay Area. So they've been canceled here and there. That hasn't helped with morale. But it's a good air quality today.
At my site, Brooke Guerrero here from West Coast Children's Clinic in the Bay Area in California, also agreed the air quality has put a damper on morale here and there. Well, a lot actually, just better this last couple of weeks. But I'm actually planning an in-person retreat on Election Day, which honestly, I feel like could go either way. I'm just crossing my fingers. I feel like people are not going to be able to work and not be able to really focus. Not that I think we're also going to know anything on Election Day, but I figured it might be a good time to foster connection. And I'm lucky enough to be in a state where a lot of our political views align, and that's helpful. I think that's helpful for trainees, that we're a very social justice and health justice oriented site. And so we've always had politics at the forefront and socio-political climate at the forefront of conversations. And so it doesn't feel new to bring it in, although it feels heavier and heavier with each passing month, and especially right now. So I'm hoping to just foster connection and a little bit of a distraction that day.
Great plan.
Jennifer, we would love to hear about your photo challenge. That sounds like fun.
So I originally came up with it for my family and my friends who live alone, since I couldn't see any of them. And then I invited the interns to participate, and they just submit them into a box folder where we can all see them. To help get them started, I put together a small PowerPoint of what my family and friends had done, just a few examples, nothing personal or anything like that. But it's been a lot of fun. It encourages you to go outside or to even look around your apartment for things that are more interesting. Like we did a super close-up challenge, and then we had to guess what that was. And then they revealed with a far shot of it. It was a lot of fun.
I like the idea of stopping the formal meeting 10 minutes before the hour so people could socialize some time at the end of those formal training sessions or training meetings. I think that's very important to give that downtime and opportunity to have that hallway discussion that you used to have when you step outside the conference room or step outside the lecture kind of thing. So I think that's great if people can build that into the schedule as well. I also remember food being a big part of my internship, so I'm sure that's highly missed, to sharing food. We used to bring food. Everyone would bring food on our training day kind of thing. So that's got to be changing a lot of dynamics out there. We're ready to move on to the next topic here.
So maybe I can make a quick other comment. This is Mark Vogel. I'm a postdoc training director in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Since we also train residents here, I've been actively participating in ACGME has a series of calls, and those calls are at least every 3 weeks that we've been kind of really focusing on what are we doing with our residents and medical residents and helping keeping them well. And what's really been interesting is that group, and maybe this is the beginning of this group, has served like a kind of a learning laboratory. We are doing work like we're doing here today, but we break up in small groups, share what we're doing, and then we bring it into the larger group. And that has been sort of coalesced as sort of a support group for the supporters, if you will. And I just kind of would want us to think about, you know, kind of what are the lessons we're learning here. Every organization has to say, here's what we're learning from this, and this is how we're getting better from it.
It is a wonderful idea. One of the ideas that came up in our last call was sort of having a running document of sorts of sort of keeping track of ways that each of us is managing to improve morale or to create change or to feel like we're doing something that feels productive and useful. And I wonder if small groups and breakout rooms might be another format for this.
Makes sense.
I love this idea, starting didactics with 3 things I'm grateful for, and close with one person being responsible for sharing something inspiring, beautiful, funny, or light. Love it. Should we move to the next slide, Jeff?
Is this the next one or was that last one?
I think this one, this
one
was for me. Yep, this is it. So one of the concerns that I'm hearing from the people around me are that there are only so many hours in the day. And living in this virtual world has added so many more tasks and responsibilities and questions and decision fatigue to everything we do. And so we're wondering if, knowing what we know, which is now more than we knew 6 months ago, if there's a way that we can sort of prevent burnout moving forward or be strategic about how we use our time, given that it's a new training year. And for most of us, we're heading into the busiest time of year. Can we prevent burnout?
Well, I think burnout's an issue, and you don't want to lose your best people, and those are the ones that are most vulnerable to burnout because they take on so many extra responsibilities, and so it's kind of a catch-22. You want your good people to take on these tasks, but at the same time, you need to help manage it and help manage the trainees because they're trying to prove their worth to the organization, as well as your clinical supervisors because they're trying to make sure that their worth is still valued. At the same time, if you continue to allow them to take on all these tasks, they will leave because they're burnt out and no one's giving them any relief. So I think checking in with people, making sure that this topic is on the table, and making sure that people are taking care of themselves. That's part of the profession-wide competencies there, that people attend to themselves. That includes trainees as well as your clinical supervisors. And besides money, there are other rewards. So a lot of us don't have access to money to give to these folks. There are other ways to do that. So I'm interested to hear more about, there's been some great ideas on here so far about how to do this, but burnout's a serious issue, and I think it's going to get even more intense this year, perhaps depending on this November 3rd activity or not. Either way, it's still going to be stressful. There's still going to be a zillion dollars in debt for the country to overcome. And so there's still going to be lots and lots of stress, no matter what the outcome of that election might be. The problems aren't going to go away either way. But people need to start, I think, acknowledging and making sure that your staff and your trainees are aware that you're supportive and that you have awareness, and you can use them to brainstorm what they need to feel comfortable and not overstretch to the point where they say, I quit.
Brooke, I love the idea of the election day retreat. And I also wonder if perhaps it would be useful for folks to consider some post-election reflection, unstructured time. I remember last year in 2016, we had seminars scheduled on that Thursday, which we ended up canceling because people just sort of wanted to process where they were at, and to have that time to come together as a community felt was helpful. I wonder if people have any thoughts sort of related to the issues that Jaida raised earlier about trainees of color and fear, and how we might address those preventatively, given that we have 3 weeks to go.
My trainees are mostly working from home, but for that particular day, many of them they really want to stay at home because they don't feel safe. Maybe thinking about how many of them feel better at home that day, especially the people who think that can be a target, which it has been a concern. I mean, physical safety has been a concern for some of my trainees. So that can be an option for us, besides bringing the topic during training on how we can help them feel a little bit better, giving them that option.
There's a comment on the chat, in the chat, that speaks about systemic change being required on so many different levels, and how important it is to get buy-in from management, because often it's the staff at the highest levels that are the most burned out. some great ideas. Having live recorded meditations and yoga. We tried that for a while in April, I believe, at our institution, of having a half-hour self-compassion one day, mindfulness one day, sort of an activity-based workshop another day for people to check in as they wanted. And I would log in to facilitate them, but I remember thinking at the time that it was like a little vacation in the middle of the day for me to be able to do a mindfulness exercise that was guided by someone else.
I also, oh, sorry, was someone else about to speak? Yada, do you want to go?
No, go ahead.
This year I decided to implement a radical healing series seminar and a liberation psychology, decolonizing mental health and therapy seminar. And I timed it so it's kicking off next week, October 22nd, to start to try to buffer some of the racial trauma that I know has been an ongoing lifetime issue and is heightened right now. And for the Radical Healing series, so there's like a seminar that is focused on liberation psychology and decolonizing therapy. And then the Radical Healing series accompanies it once a month. I'm inviting healers from the area and beyond to talk about like their beautiful work that they're doing, like community healing. We have healing circles and ancestral healing and different community organizations to come in to try to also inspire hope at a time that feels so hopeless. And I think that that's when I think of burnout. I think the hopelessness has been really challenging. So I'm hoping that this series feels supportive.
Sounds like a great idea.
Somebody's asking if you might share that, Brooke, that syllabus that if you have one of those.
Happy to share. It's still in development, so I can share what I have so far.
Great.
There's another comment in the chat about, again, sort of a top-down strategy that has to do with reducing billing targets for people and giving staff permission and trainees permission to work at home if they need to, if they're balancing childcare responsibilities. I start every meeting by announcing that, I'm responsible for 5 children today, and so there's a horde of elephants that people might hear. But instead of pretending like those things aren't part of what we're struggling with, I think naming it as an additional stressor and bringing it in feels really important to me.
Dr. Holohan brings up a very good point too. Working in larger agencies or institutions kinds of things that has its own challenges and burdens, and trainees have usually been insulated or isolated from a lot of that stuff because it's the politics or it's the management issue kinds of things that you deal with and the trainees don't have to deal with, but they're kind of in the middle of it this year probably, and I'm sure that's been difficult to manage. I don't know how you've been managing it with your trainees, Dr. Holohan, but I'd be interested to hear more.
Yeah, I can't say that well. It was just, I was aware of it more like in our end of the year evaluations. Usually some of the things that we scored the highest on were lower than normal in my 20-year career. And a lot of it was these kinds of things of just feeling the rigidity of an organization and feeling that they weren't treated as valued, and just some of the things I've never heard from a trainee. And some of that is that the messages are communicated directly. So through policies and procedures or executive orders and things like that, there's no filter that we normally have. And so I think it's been hard to watch that happen and feel less effectual. I feel like I've tried to advocate on their behalf, but there's some real system problems that make that quite a challenge.
Well, that's not just the VA. Definitely worked with a lot of systems this year, New York City, Miami, and a number of different organizations and institutions where interns felt less valued and that the institution was taking priority. What seemed to help the most was when the training director would recognize and acknowledge that and say, if we could make these changes, we would. And we're hoping that they will come eventually, but you need to know that we're here, we're supportive, and we will be as flexible and creative as possible to help you make it through this year while still meeting our goals, expectations, and competencies. So if you can reassure your trainees or your fellow staff as well, that seems to be one of the variables that seem to be very helpful. We've heard from trainees how wonderful it was that their training director at least acknowledged that they were experiencing some of this distress and confusion. So I hope that people can just not hide it, so to speak, and to acknowledge that you're as frustrated as they might be, maybe even more so in some cases, and maybe less so in other cases, because you have a job that's ongoing and they're worried about what they're going to do next for a postdoc or license, and are they going to meet any of the criteria for any of that kind of stuff. As well as this class of interns, we're feeling anxious because of the lower number of hours, if you're counting hours. So lots of dynamics out there. It's not just the VA, it's not just the hospitals, it's not just the universities. Everyone across the board seems to be feeling this way and are frustrated.
I appreciate that. And that was actually helpful. And I think any advocacy that they saw was very appreciated. So even if we didn't get many wins, some things that were more flexible or they had some help on some things was really valued by them. So I was struck by, it hadn't occurred to me until 2 weeks ago, but our current interns are incredibly stressed. And I hadn't really thought of it because I was so focused on last year's class and other things, but their dissertations have all been impacted, and their timelines and being able to apply for postdocs and say they're going to be done. And they look agitated in a way. You know, my past interns were all sort of past that point and were able to graduate, but I hadn't really thought of the current trainees and how stressed they are. And it was across the board. I saw some really, really frantic looks, just realizing the impact this would have in a number of ways.
I think that's very accurate information. If you remember, the pandemic was full force around March, so your trainees had 6 months to become a cohesive group or find support or smaller groups within that. This group has not had that experience, I don't think. That's what worried me, and that's why I asked that question about orientation, and usually a lot of bonding goes on at that time. So I'm hoping that training directors provide that kind of support and information. But I don't want to forget that we're also worried about your burnout and what you do for yourself. And there's been some great ideas in the chat. I know it's time to move to the next question, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and we have some time for comments as well. Dr. Hill, I think you're on this one.
Yeah, and I just make a comment on the dissertation stress. So I have my hand in 2 different stages of training, both at the postdoc level and then also at the doctoral student level. And so with this group who is now on internship and also the ones applying to internship, absolutely that dissertation stress is significant. And so something we've done within our doctoral program is to allow significant modifications to the research design post, just to modify it. So, you know, maybe it was a randomized clinical trial and now it's a feasibility study. You know, maybe it's, you know, so anyway, we just allowed them to, or maybe you had a goal of 50 participants and now it's going to be a little more exploratory with 10, you know, and so, so that's something we've been doing. So yeah, so the question I wanted to pose to the group is, you know, what ongoing challenges do you anticipate as the training year continues? And I will just put one out there in terms of morale and reducing stress is most of you on here are are involved in internship and are training directors. So the admissions new portal is out, and there is our second webinar we did last week, I think was, if you saw the first one, I suggest you actually go back and watch the recording of the second one because we fine-tuned it and it was significantly better. And then we have more webinars coming out, but I can put the link to that recording here in the chat in a second. But that's one thing, and I'm here if you have questions about that as you start to navigate that. But if you're wondering, oh no, I have to learn something new in the middle of all of this, and I don't have time for this right now, and I'm already behind. There are only 18 applications that have been submitted in the entire process as of today, out of 56,000. So you're not missing out anything. There shouldn't be any applications in your portal.
I put the link in the chat, Kimberly.
Oh, thank you so much. But beyond internship selection, what other challenges do you anticipate for the training year?
You know, as I think about internship selection, which is sort of a seasonal challenge, I just think about my own kind of bandwidth. And it seems like the idea of learning something new and so significantly new feels a little bit overwhelming to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if anybody else is having that experience as we prepare for addressing the new season and evaluating applications. And so part of what I've been doing is getting started a little bit earlier. So normally I don't even go into my portal, you know, maybe once to make sure that applications are coming in, and then I don't go in until I'm ready to close it and download them all. But now I'm going in to sort of like play with the interface and figure out what might work for me. It will be even more useful once I have applications in there. But I think being planful is something that I anticipate will be useful.
Mm-hmm. And we're in the process of making some mini, M-I-N-I, little videos that you can pick and choose based on how the new portal has so many bells and whistles, and for this first year, I'm anticipating that people are going to want to use it in the same way they used to use it, and much more simple, because the old portal was very simple. And so we're going to try to make mini videos of if you want to assign reviewers, or if you'd like to create a review form, and so that you can watch them when you have 5 minutes break in that 10 of challenge time that you want to learn something new, that you can digest. So we're trying to make some digestible videos that I think will help you through it. And the
Dr. Hill walked me through setting up a review form, which was amazing. And when I think of all the work that goes into making a review form, my faculty write on it, some of them write on it, some of them do it in an Excel spreadsheet, some of them have a fillable PDF. I am overwhelmed by, 300 pieces of paper. And so I'm really excited for being able to review in the portal and then to just download a spreadsheet with scores to invite people for interviews.
Yeah.
Bells and whistles, ding, ding, ding.
But also Liaison, who are the folks that, built the portal for us. They have hired, extra, they're going to have extra staff on hand to help walk you all through it if you want to just call their support line along the way. So there should be plenty of support available. You're not alone as we learn this all together.
Thank you for all the work you've done on updating the APPIC. I know that that's been a monumental task that's been so many years in the making.
Yeah, thank me later after we get through this cycle. But yes, but I think, again, I think this is just a very specific thing that's on our immediate horizon. I'm really curious about the ongoing challenges. Are folks worried about I guess we're going to stick with selection. Are we worried about how the virtual interviewing is going to go, or properly communicating our culture, our program culture to prospective applicants? Does everyone figure that out?
Yes, and yes.
Any other responses on the ongoing challenges? I think Kimberly has identified some current issues there. It's important for staff to take care of themselves. It's important for you as the training director to take care of yourself. And I know there's lots of duties and responsibilities, and the new APPIC will be really, really good. I want to remind everyone that the original launch of the online APPIC was a challenge and took several years to get to where this one is at already. So Kimberly's already amazingly got it, most of the glitches worked out. There's still a few, and there will be, and we will fix those as fast as possible.
I like the idea of training directors taking care of themselves. I have to take a day off next week to attend a funeral, and that's probably it's not anyone very close, but I'm sort of excited about the idea of a day off that I have to take, and it made me realize that I really need to do this more often and not be in a position where I have to take a day off for something else, but to be more planful about implementing them.
I think that is a great point, because maybe some of you, your vacation were canceled or limited during the pandemic. And I think that we got out of our normal self-care routine, or time with family, or time for vacation, and you cannot travel. So it's good to go back and readjust our routines related to taking vacations and time off.
Or time without family. I like that one too. People are confined at home a lot, so. Well, Shona, I know we only have a few minutes left. Did you want to talk?
Yeah.
I want to let you know that there are 330 people already signed up, and we haven't really advertised the cultural competency training coming up on next Friday.
So next Friday, we have a webinar that was supposed to be the plenary event for our APPIC conference in April. And we're really glad that Dr. Sanchez is going to be able to present for our membership. It's from 3 to 4:30 Central Time next Friday. And it's called Cultural Competence Training, a New Paradigm for the 21st Century. There's 1.5 CEs for live attendance, but the call will be recorded and available on our website. Our next community chat is going to be on the 19th. And if you have any ideas before you leave today, put them in the chat in terms of the topic, or we have maybe 3 minutes to discuss what would be helpful. Coming into this, Kimberly and I were discussing that it might be useful to have more APPIC support and support around managing organization and of interviews and sort of virtual interviewing. And so that's kind of where our brains were leaning, but if you have other ideas, please let us know. The discussion is open. You can feel free to email me if there's anything that is really compelling to you that you would want us to consider. In December, we will have our community chat on the third Thursday, but we will not have any webinars in November and December because they're right around Thanksgiving and Christmas.
And selection process. I love the idea from Dr. Yaros about that she gave a prize to the first intern to use their PTO this year. So I think that's very reinforcing and supports that.
Any other thoughts or questions before we sign off here? No, thank you for joining us. We so appreciate your perspective, and we want you to know that while there might not be solutions, we are all here to support each other, and we're experimenting by trial and often a lot of errors, but
Yeah. Thanks to everyone's contribution.
moving along.
Chat's very helpful. Thank you all. Bye-bye now.